A former ICE agent is blowing the whistle. It is absolutely insane, extraordinarily serious allegations from Ryan Schwank, who says that the training program at ICE Academy is by design deficient, defective, and broken. Now, I'm going to play his testimony in a moment. One of the issues or questions that's come up as we see ICE agents carry out this completely immoral and also just counterproductive in every way. To even call it a deportation program doesn't make sense because a lot of the people aren't even subject to deportation, but sort of goon squad raids, whatever you want to call it. As we see them carry it out, one of the questions we've come up against is, how could their instincts be so disastrous when they are out on the streets, talking to people, interacting with people? Is it because the training has failed, or is it because the training is the problem? And at least from what Ryan Schwank says, it seems that a lot of the problems are that this is how people are being trained. Now, of course, the training is too short and not comprehensive enough. But the point is, according to the whistleblower, on his first day training cadets, he was someone training them. He was given instructions to teach them to enter homes without warrants. That's against the law. He also claims 240 hours of instruction were cut, including classes on the legal system, firearms training, use of force, what constitutes a lawful arrest, what are the standards to detain someone, the limits of their authority. Well, that's going to be a problem. Take a listen to this.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Senator Blumenthal, Representative Garcia, members of the committee. My name is Ryan Schwank. I swore an oath to uphold the Constitution when I joined ICE on August 1st, 2021, as an assistant chief counsel. I followed that oath for 4.5 years, working side by side with ICE officers. And I followed it when I resigned on February 13th, 2026, a little over a week ago, so that I could speak to you today. I am here because I am duty-bound to report the legally required training program at the ICE Academy is deficient, defective, and broken. 5 months ago, I was asked to teach the law to new cadets at the ICE Academy in Glencoe, Georgia, where ICE is training its new, inexperienced recruits. I volunteered, those without law enforcement training, I volunteered to take on this assignment based on my experience in law enforcement oversight, including at the state and local level prior to my work with ICE. On my first day, I received secretive orders to teach new cadets to violate the Constitution by entering homes without a judicial warrant. For the last 5 months, I watched ICE dismantle the training program, cutting 240 hours of vital classes from a 584-hour program. Classes that teach the Constitution, our legal system, firearms training, the use of force, lawful arrests, proper detention, and the limits of officers' authority.
Sort of like all of the critical stuff. These are not little details. This should really make up the core of their training, in fact.
For example, they ceased all of the legal instructions regarding use of force. This means that cadets are not taught what it means to be objectively reasonable, the very standard which the law requires them to meet when deciding whether or not to use deadly force.
Why are they using deadly force in the way that they are? It seems that it's inappropriate. Well, they weren't trained as to what's appropriate, at least according to Ryan Schwank.
Our jobs as instructors are to teach them so well that they can make split-second decisions about what they can and cannot do in life or death situations. Yet, in the name of churning out an endless stream of officers, DHS leadership has dismantled the academic and practical tests that we need to know if cadets can safely and lawfully perform their job. All to satisfy an administration demanding they train thousands of new officers before the end of the year. DHS told the public that new cadets receive all the training they need to perform their duties, that no critical material or standards have been cut. This is a...
And it cuts off there where he says, this is a lie. Let's break this down very carefully. And, that's 3 minutes of video. It's relatively boring testimony. You really have to be able to think through what it is that Ryan Schwank is saying here. We have a Fourth Amendment in this country, and it protects against unreasonable searches and seizures. Entering a private home without a judicial warrant is a clear constitutional red line in American law, with extraordinarily narrow exceptions. Law enforcement officers normally receive extensive training because if you violate it, you invalidate a case and you can even expose your agency to a lawsuit. If ICE cadets are being instructed to bypass warrant requirements as standard practice, that is not a gray area. That is a systemic protocol of violating rights. And the second part might be just as alarming. Cutting 240 hours of instruction from a federal law enforcement academy is not a small tweak. It is months of preparation. And if those hours include legal training, use of force doctrine, firearms training, you are creating officers with less knowledge of constitutional boundaries, and it is going to lead to exactly what we're seeing. It is illuminating. It is a radioactive combination. Reduced legal education plus increased operational authority, at least as far as they believe, means you're going to be doing unlawful arrests, excessive force. And if we step back from this, ICE is operating in one of the most politically charged environments that any federal law enforcement agency has had to operate in. Its officers are conducting home visits, detentions, removals. You can't sort of be like, well, we don't really need the constitutional literacy. It is foundational to what they are doing. If the whistleblower is accurate, there are 3 implications here. Number 1, civil liberties risk. If they're improperly entering homes or conducting arrests that go beyond legal threshold, you're eroding Fourth Amendment protections. Absolute tragedy. Number 2, not that I care, but there is huge institutional liability. Unlawful entry or detention exposes them and taxpayers, this is why we would care, to lawsuits and settlements and civil judgments. That's not what I want law enforcement agencies involved in. And finally, you are also degrading your own mission. If you have an enforcement agency that cuts the core training, that doesn't make them stronger, that makes them fragile. And when you lower training standards, you're not going to produce better outcomes. We learned a couple months ago that they were so desperate for new hires that they were bringing in people who couldn't even read by reports, a guy who weighed almost 500 pounds. And I'm not saying that, oh my God, it's a fat guy. He wasn't cleared medically to do anything. This was someone who was so obese. And somehow he was advancing through the training process because they're so desperate. So on the one hand, they're desperate to bring in anyone, and then they're not even getting the training that they should be getting. That is a major problem. Now, finally, there is a governance issue here. Whistleblowers usually don't speak out publicly unless they believe that the internal channels aren't working. And so when you hear from Ryan Schwank, we have to guess, at least potentially, he's doing it because the internal channels for saying, hey, this isn't okay, aren't working, or his complaints were completely ignored. Now, I think that the final part of this is, will this testimony even lead to an investigation? Or does Kristi Noem, quite frankly, not give a damn? Because it seems as though this is the protocol. Like if you go to Kristi Noem and you go, hey, did you know they cut out 240 hours of training and they're explaining to people how to get beyond the lack of a judicial warrant? You've got to investigate. Kristi Noem would probably go, no, yeah, that's what we want them to do. They're doing what we want them to do. And so then where do you go? And just a reminder, this is another reason why taking back control of the House from Republicans in November is important. We might not be able to get Kristi Noem fired. We might not be able to get the policy changed, but congressional investigative authority can make a lot of these people's lives a living hell, and they certainly deserve it. Thanks for watching. Check out this other video. And if you like our content, make sure to subscribe so YouTube puts our videos in your feed, and subscribe to the podcast on Spotify and Apple.